Okay, so let's jump right into a question that I think, well, it probably bugs all of us. You know that feeling? The one where there's this huge, frustrating gap between what you know you should do and what you actually do? We're going to dive into that today, looking at it through the eyes of theologian Ebrahim Moosa. He turns to classical Islamic thought to find some surprisingly relevant answers for our time. So let's see how some ancient wisdom might just help us bridge that gap. And our journey starts with this really profound quote from a 10th century mystic named Al-Nifri. Now get this, he says, "The more the vision increases, the more the expression decreases." So what's he getting at? Basically, the more you truly get something, the deeper your understanding, the less you actually need to talk about it. Real knowledge isn't about, long speeches or complicated essays. It's this deep, internalized insight that just naturally leads you to act. And boom, that lands us right in the middle of our modern paradox, doesn't it? I mean, we are just swimming, maybe even drowning, in a sea of information. A constant flood of words, posts, opinions. We've got more expression than at any point in history. But that old quote from Al-Nifri makes you stop and ask a pretty uncomfortable question. With all this talking, are we actually saying anything that matters? Or is it all just noise that, conveniently helps us avoid actually doing anything? So that really gets to the heart of it. We've somehow managed to slice knowledge and action apart. In this section, we're going to look at why true knowledge isn't just some fact you store away in your head. It's got to be the engine that makes things happen. So thinkers like Fakhr el-Din al-Razi, they flip the script on this. In the Islamic tradition, he says, doing good things isn't just a consequence of your belief. It's not like step 1, believe, step 2, do good deeds. No. The good deeds actually bubble up from the very core of your faith. The act of believing is an action itself. It's this incredible concept called praxis, this total fusion of what you know and what you do. They're not separate things, they're one. Okay, so if knowledge and action are supposed to be this one unified thing, what's driving the wedge between them? Well, the source material points to something called epistemic vices. And that might sound a little academic, but it's a powerful idea. These aren't just flaws that make us, bad people. They're character traits that literally block our ability to see the truth and act on it. They make us blind. And right at the center of this problem is a vice that the great thinker Al-Ghazali called futur. Now this word, it's a big one. It's so much more than just being lazy or procrastinating. Think of it more like a deep spiritual exhaustion, an indifference, a torpor of the heart, as he puts it. It's that heavy, paralyzing feeling when you absolutely know you should do something important, but you just can't find the energy or the will to even start. And let me tell you, Al-Ghazali does not pull any punches. He calls this state hamaka, which translates to sheer stupidity. But we have to be super clear here. This has nothing to do with intelligence or your IQ. For Al-Ghazali, this is a moral failing. It's a flaw of the soul that we're actually responsible for. It's like a form of spiritual self-sabotage, because it stops us from becoming who we're meant to be, from knowing, from acting, from truly flourishing. So this lays it out pretty clearly, right? You've got two paths. On one side, you have the virtues that help you see, things like humility, being genuinely curious, fighting for justice, being able to discern what's real. These are like keys that unlock the door to true knowledge. And on the other side, well, that's where you find the vices, arrogance, bias, just seeing what's right in front of you, and that spiritual sloth we just discussed. These are the things that slam the door shut. They're the roadblocks that lead straight to moral blindness. Okay, so what does this moral blindness actually look like when it's not just a theory? As the source text points out, this isn't some abstract philosophical puzzle. It has absolutely devastating real-world consequences. The source presents this verse from the Quran as a kind of moral siren, a loud, blaring warning. And it's really chilling. It asks, "Shall we inform you of those whose deeds will bring them the most loss?" And the answer is, they are those whose manner of living have strayed far while deluded into thinking they are acting righteously. Think about that. The greatest loss isn't for people who know they're doing wrong. It's for people who are so lost, so deluded, they're absolutely convinced they're on the right path. That's the peak of moral blindness. And here's where it gets incredibly real on a global scale. The author, Moosa, asks a really tough question. How do we make sense of moments in history when leaders and even whole populations witness absolute horrors? He points to examples like Nazi Germany, Rwanda, Bosnia, and others, and they just don't act. He argues that the only way to explain this kind of massive inaction in the face of catastrophe is through a deep, profound moral and spiritual blindness. The kind that's rooted in those same epistemic vices we've been talking about. The thinker Walter Benjamin frames this whole paradox in a really stark historical light. He says, there is no document of civilization which is not at the same time a document of barbarism. Just let that sink in. He's reminding us that all the things we celebrate, our great art, our philosophies, our monuments, they're so often built on a history of suffering and violence that we'd rather not look at. Progress and brutality, they're tangled together. And James Baldwin? Well, he gives us the poetic and moral gut punch that follows from that thought. He says people who treat other people as less than human must not be surprised when the bread they have cast on the waters come floating back to them poisoned. It's such a powerful image, right? It shows the inevitable consequence of dehumanizing others. That poison you put out into the world, it doesn't just disappear. It always comes back. It seeps into everything and corrupts the whole system. And that is a direct result of the moral blindness we've been exploring. Okay, so if the problem is all of these deep-seated vices, these roadblocks, what's the solution? How do we fix this? Well, the thinkers we're looking at, they don't just leave us with the problem. They point to a path forward, a path of action. And the answer isn't just about trying to be more virtuous. It's about actively taking apart, dismantling the vices themselves. The theologian Ibn al-Qayyim offers this just brilliant practical framework for this. He says there are 4 pillars holding up this state of moral blindness: arrogance, envy, anger, and lust. But here's the cool part. Look what happens when you start taking them down one by one. You dismantle arrogance, and suddenly you're able to accept the truth no matter where it comes from. You dismantle envy, and now you can actually listen to sincere advice. You take apart anger, and that opens you up to acting with justice and humility. And when you tackle lust, you cultivate patience and a capacity for worship. See how it works? It's an active, step-by-step process of purification. And all of this leads us to our final section, and maybe the most powerful tool of all for finding that moral clarity, for finally reconnecting what we know with what we do. Al-Ghazali, centuries ago, came to this just radical conclusion. He basically says, stop just relying on what other people tell you. Don't just blindly follow traditions or teachers. Your path, your very self, depends on what he called istiqlal, which means intellectual independence. You have to become a seeker of truth for yourself. You have to do the work of inquiry so that your viewpoint is truly your own. And that brings us to this final, powerful challenge from Al-Ghazali. It really wraps up everything we've talked about. He says, who does not doubt fails to inquire. Who does not inquire fails to gain insight. Without insight, you remain blind. The path from blindness to sight, from knowing to actually doing, it all starts with one thing: the courage to doubt, the courage to question what you've been told, to test your own biases, and to start that hard, necessary work of inquiry. Because without that, we're just stuck in the dark. So the question this explainer leaves us with is a personal one. What are you prepared to doubt in order to finally, truly see?